Without question, you can have all the skill and all the talent. But if you lack the correct mindset, if you lack what it takes inside of you, you will never reach your full potential. Look, I was a high school dropout. I started my first business at age 22 with just $200 and a dream. I struggled for those first couple of years. And truly, I think by the grace of God, by divine intervention, I walked into an office one day and a man there changed my life. And he changed my life by giving me a copy of the book, Think and Grow Rich. He gave me this exact copy. Now, when he gave me this copy, it was brand new. And he said, I'm going to share with you the secrets of this book. There's 13 principles in the book, and I'm going to spend a year with you, and I'm going to mentor you through these. And if at the end of that time, if you're not a millionaire, it won't be my fault. Now, to be honest with you, I didn't really believe him. I mean, I guess I believed him, but I didn't believe in me. I thought if he really knew how messed up I was, if he knew how bad of a financial situation I was in, how much I was struggling, he would never be that confident. But he was. And I think maybe for the first time in my life, I borrowed someone else's belief. And he started to teach me, and I'm going to share with you what he taught me just in this one principle in the book. The principle is desire. And let me just share with you how this relates to sales. I think if you're in sales, there is no question that you are hoping, that you're wanting, and you're wishing for better results. But here's the truth. Everybody in sales hopes, wants, and wishes for better sales. That simply isn't enough. In the book, he talks about how our minds become magnets that attract to us the people, the conditions, and the circumstances of our dominating belief, our dominating self-concept. Our self-concept is based on two things. It is our self-image, that's the image we hold of ourselves, how we see ourselves, and how we think the world sees us. Most of that image has been programmed into you at a very early age. For me, because I grew up with a terrible stuttering problem, I had a very low self-confidence. When I was 6, 7, 8, 9 years of age, that was the 1970s. A speech impediment was considered a learning disability, and I was labeled learning disabled. I just assumed, believed that I was dumb and stupid, and I accepted that image. I was told my whole life that you'll never get anywhere without an advanced education. If you don't have a high school, education, if you don't get a diploma, if you don't go into college, you'll never amount to anything. And I believed that. My results proved that I believed that. After failing out of school, I landed a dead-end job as a roofer. I struggled. I worked for minimum wage. At that time, that was $4.10 an hour. And you know what? It was actually a pretty fair trade because that's about all I was worth. I didn't bring any value. And I hated the job. I hated it on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. Even on Saturday when I worked the job, I hated it. And on Sunday when I didn't work the job, I hated it because I knew Monday was coming. But here's the interesting thing. Even though I hated it, when I was in the bus ride there every morning at 4 o'clock, because you have to start roofing really early because the hot sun, you have to be done by 1 in the afternoon. Every day on that bus, I prayed that they wouldn't fire me because I thought this was as good as it would get. I did that for a number of years. And then, as I said, when I was 22 years old, I took a couple $100. I bought a used vacuum cleaner. I bought a mop bucket and a wringer and a mop from Home Depot. I bought some furniture polish and a bottle of Windex. And I started going door to door, selling myself to see if I could clean offices late at night. And that's when I walked into Patrick Hayes' office. What the book tells you is that you have to go beyond just a want and a wish. That energy of wanting and wishing has to evolve. And so you start with this low self-image of yourself. And then the second part of our self-concept is our self-esteem. That's our personal self-regard. That's our value. How do we value us? What's my self-worth? And it's not only how we see ourselves in terms of value, but it's how we train the world to treat us. And so many salespeople who go through training and they learn all the techniques, They master all the scripts. They learn everything, and they really want to do better. For some reason, there seems to be like this invisible boundary that holds them back. And I have trained thousands of people how to break free from that invisible boundary. And that invisible boundary is their desire. Because although they want and they wish it, their desire really is weak. As I said, everybody wants to have more money. If it was wanting and wishing that worked, everybody would be skinny, rich, and happy. But most people are not skinny, rich, and happy. They want to be, but they're not. See, we have to go from a want and a wish and a hope to a desire. Now, the word desire comes from the Latin word desire, D-E-S-I-R-E. It means to give birth to. We sire horses, don't we? So we have to turn our want and wish into a desire, into something that we actually give birth to, something that pulls us when we're failing, pulls us when we're struggling, pulls us when we're beating ourselves up, interrupts the pattern of self-sabotage because we desire what we want so strongly that we're so committed that we would do anything. See, when I walked in to Patrick Hayes' office, I was willing to do anything he told me to do. I no longer wanted and hoped and wished. I went right to desire. And then as I started to study and started to believe in myself a little bit more, my desire went from a desire to a burning desire. But then in the book, in the chapter on desire, he says you have to go beyond that. He says your burning desire has to become an all-consuming obsession, meaning that the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning is your performance. It's about reaching your goal. It's about peak performance, personal achievement. The thought of you not having what it is that you want keeps you up at night, drives you mad. It's an insatiable desire. You just have to have it. And the more you desire it and the more it becomes this burning obsession, more ideas begin to attract into your mind about things that you can do, ways that you can improve. And you will do things that you've never done before. You will talk to people you've never met before. You will perform in ways that you never have. On page 35 in my book, he says, every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn the ships and cut all sources of retreat. Only by so doing can one be sure of maintaining the state of mind known as a burning, all-consuming desire, necessary to win. It's essential for your success. What does it mean for you to burn your ships? See, there's this invisible boundary that we also have of our own willingness. There are things that people are just unwilling to do. They've made agreements already in their mind that this won't work, or other people have tried it, or I tried it once or twice before and it didn't work. And so we hope and want and wish, and we get an idea to do something. We learn a new skill, a new tactic, a new strategy, and we work it for a little bit of time. And the first sign that there's no real evidence of success, we surrender the idea. We give up and we quit. What he's saying here is that you have to burn those ships. You have to remove all sources of retreat. Think about just your daily practice. What are things that you know you could do, know you should do, and know if you would do, you would increase your results, but you don't do those things. You don't do those things because you're not sure if they're going to work. You don't want to waste your time. Other people have said that, they've tried and it didn't work. Maybe you gave it a go for a short period of time and didn't get the expected results. Or you've just bought into what other people are saying. Maybe it's the economy's bad. Maybe that territory is already worked over. Maybe that account really belongs to your competitor and there's no way you can break in. And so you surrender territory that you should never surrender. He says, you may as well know right here and right now that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. See, if you're in sales You have to be money motivated. It has to be the scorecard. You can't be afraid to talk about money. You can't have negative thoughts about people who have money. The rich don't pay their fair share. You can't demonize people who have money. You can't demonize capitalism. Boy, isn't there an attack in our society? I mean, just recently, we saw that the city of New York elected a socialist democratic mayor whose plan is to just kind of give everything away. And we know that socialism has failed everywhere it's been tried. And yet, people somehow believe that that's the way that, they're going to be able to get ahead in life, is that if the government gives them a handout. I have never met one successful person. And he says here, riches in great quantities. I'm not talking about making 50, 70, $100,000 a year. I'm talking about making $250,000, $500,000. I'm talking about making real money, life-changing money. You don't get there wanting and wishing. You have to fall in love with this idea of wealth generation, of creating an income that actually will lead you and your family to financial freedom. You have to want that with your heart and your soul. It has to be an all-consuming obsession. I wanted it so bad. Now, I'm going to share some successes with you, and I do so not to brag, but I want you to think about what your expectations are of a person who fails out of school in the 10th grade, never makes it to become a junior or senior, never graduates, has no work experience, has never owned a business before, has $200 and a mop bucket and a used vacuum cleaner, and is going to start a commercial cleaning company, start a janitorial service. They're going to start their own business, and they're 22 years old. If you could fast forward in their life, how do you think that story ends? I can tell you, for most people, it doesn't end pretty. One of the reasons why we have the idiom that tells us that if you don't get a great education, you'll amount to anything, is because in most cases, statistically, it's true. Statistically, if you fail out of school, statistically, if you have no job experience, statistically, if you don't understand the workings of a business, statistically, you fail. Good for you and good for me that you and I aren't a statistic. See, a statistic is based on group result. You are not a group. You're an individual. And I broke all of those statistics. Today, at the time of this recording, it's December 2025. I live in one of the wealthiest zip codes in the United States, which is arguably one of the wealthiest countries in the world. I live in a estate home. There's only 33 of them in my community. My home is nearly 7,000 square feet. I have a net worth of tens and tens of millions of dollars. I have clients all over the world in 162 different countries. I've built 8 multi-million dollar companies, and those companies generated over $1 billion in revenue. The last company I sold in January of 2020 had generated $562 million, $500 million, and I did that in 10 years. See, that's not supposed to happen. High school dropouts who start out as janitors are not supposed to create those kinds of results. And I can tell you, as I've looked at my life and as I've studied success and achievement, and believe me, brother, I have studied it. The only thing that I can say that I did that other people didn't do was I tackled my mindset. I challenged every single limiting belief that I had been holding on to and that I was programmed to believe about myself and other people. I did the hard, and I hate to say this word because it's so cliche, I did the hard inner work. And I made a commitment to myself that I would never rest, that I would do anything, that any idea that came into my awareness, as long as it was legal, I wouldn't ask whether it was right or wrong, good or bad, should I or shouldn't I. Up until that point, I was living my life by opinion poll. When I wanted to make a decision, I ran around asking everybody else what they thought. I stopped doing that. And I asked myself one question. This is the question. If I act on this idea, will it move me in the direction of my dream? See, I don't know if the idea is right or wrong. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know if it'll work or not work. But I certainly wasn't going to allow an idea that had attracted into my mind intuitively. I didn't have the idea before I woke up and boom, an idea came. Cold call on this company. Try this in the marketplace. Expand your services from janitorial services and buy a carpet cleaning machine, and then buy a floor polishing machine, and then buy a window washing machine, and then buy a pressure cleaning machine. And I started to build profit centers within my business. There was no evidence that any of those ideas would work, but I had such a strong desire that I was willing to fail to give it a go. I was willing to fail because I knew if it worked, it would move me closer to my dream. How do we go from, he says here, unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money? How do you do that? Well, I mentioned before that I had fallen in love with this idea of creating wealth for myself, of financial freedom. That's how you work up to this white heat of desire, to this all-consuming obsession. Turn off your TV. Stop listening to social media. Start putting in your mind ideas that are congruent and in harmony with the results that you want. Study successful people. Listen to this channel every day for 90 days. And look, if you don't want to listen to my channel, listen to somebody else's channel. But listen to somebody who has the results that you want in your life. In computer science, there's this old saying, garbage in, garbage out. And so many salespeople who have this, want and wish and hope to create wealth and financial freedom in their lives and reach goals will sit down at night or start their day and turn on the TV and tune into CNN, constant negative news. They'll listen to other salespeople who are just sharing, the crisis du jour, the problem of the day, sharing all the bad news of why things won't work. They'll come up with an idea and then live by opinion poll and ask everybody else what they think they should do. So afraid to just give something a test and really stick to it and really make a commitment. Unwilling to burn their ships. Better safe than sorry. Playing the game of life, playing the game of business, playing the game of sales, not to win, but just not lose. And then they wonder why they can't outperform a certain level. I have mentored people in sales who for 4, 5, 6 years in a row get right up to $100,000 and then go back down. $100,000 and go back down. Maybe they break it one year. They go to 103, 106. And then the next year, boop, they go right back down to their old belief system. See, you have within you this cybernetic mechanism, this control system that just will not allow you to perform beyond your own self-belief. You have to really fall in love with this idea of wealth creation, of making money. You can't have making money be a bad thing. You can't be afraid to talk about your financial goals. You shouldn't be ashamed of talking about money. Most of us have been programmed, you don't talk about sex, religion, or money. But you're in the money game. If you're in sales, every single conversation, sooner or later, gets down to money. And if you're afraid to talk about money, if you're intimidated about money, if you don't like people who have money, you will always struggle. You have to write out your goals. You have to visualize your goals. You have to affirm your goals. See, all of these things that we've heard for years and years about writing your goals and visualizing your goals and thinking about and affirming to yourself the positive attributes yourself. We've heard these things and they sound so simple, like that can't be it, but it is it. Because when you do those things, what you're doing is you're reprogramming yourself. Just think about this. Think about where your mom and dad were in their lives when they conceived you. Were they living life in what we would call prosperity consciousness? Or were they living in maybe a poverty consciousness? When they raised you, when you were just a little baby on the blanket on the floor in your bassinet, were you surrounded by people who talked positively about money? who had financial goals, who really believed in the American dream, the pursuit of happiness, the ability to generate real wealth? Or were you programmed like I was, that only the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and that the game is fixed? And, if you're not born into money, you don't stand a chance. If you're not part of the club, if you're on this side of the tracks, you don't got a shot. Think about the environment that you grew up in. Were you growing up seeing beautiful pieces of art in your community, in your home? Were you walking to school in a community that was, filled with beautiful homes? Or did you walk by, kind of tenement buildings, a working class neighborhood, garbage cans, in the front yard? And look, I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that's not prosperity consciousness. And so when you don't see abundance in your everyday life, when you don't see prosperity modeled for you, when the talk at the dinner table isn't about what you want to do with all of your wealth, but how you'll never have it, you're at a disadvantage. I have a 9 and 10-year-old boy. We homeschool them. And we watch the stock market. And when the bell rings at 9:30, myself and the boys, we stand up and we applaud capitalism. They've been buying stocks since they were 6 years old. And when I mean they were buying stocks, I don't mean that they were, just casually watching or pretending. I mean, they know the 11 sectors of the S&P 500. I never knew that. They buy in the pre-market, which is an auction. So they know the bid and the ask price. They know the spread. My boys watched an interview on CNBC one night, and the next day they bought shares in the video. They only bought 5. It was $25 for them to buy 5. It was $5.85. That was back in 2017. Do you know that those 5 shares have gone up 130,000%? 130,000%. The stock has split 3 times since then. Think about this for a minute. What were you being taught when you were a young child? I can tell you this. I certainly wasn't taught about money. I didn't understand the stock. I didn't even know there was a stock market when I was 8 and 9 and 10 years old. I didn't know about the stock market, my goodness, till I was in maybe my early 20s, really. I remember seeing the stock page when I used to deliver the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in the morning or the Pittsburgh Press in the evening, but it might as well have been written in Chinese when I looked at the paper. I didn't understand any of it. I didn't really understand the stock market, capitalism, the free market, money. And it was no wonder that I didn't have any. I was intimidated by it. I never expected it. And expectation drives belief. And belief drives behavior. So a person who doesn't understand money, a person who's intimidated by money, a person who demonizes people with money, a person who doesn't believe they'll ever have money, do you expect them to have great money results? I don't. And you can look. It's been said that you can be in the right place at the right time to be successful. That's wrong. There have been times in my life where I was right in the middle of the right place at exactly the right time, and other people won, but I lost. You can develop all the skills, talent, and strategy in sales and still meet this invisible boundary of desire and your understanding of what makes you tick, what drives your behavior, and you'll fail. Not sometimes, all the times. He says, put your dream across and never mind what they say if you meet with temporary defeat. For they, perhaps, do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood, and put his dream into action. And despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. How many times have you quit? How many times have you abandoned the strategy? Rather than taking personal inventory and saying to yourself, hold it, have I really invested the time to get good? Do you know in the United States, the average adult reads at the sixth grade level? I've been partners and had clients. Dr. John Maxwell, the number one guy in leadership, Dr. Daniel Amen, the foremost authority on the structure of the brain, Dr. Robert Cialdini, the number one behavioral scientist out of Arizona University, Dr. Bruce Lipton, the author of Biology of Belief. Do you know what all of these great authors, number one selling authors, all have in common? Aside from being number one authors and all being very wealthy and successful, being highly paid public speakers, the one thing they have in common is that when they write a book, every single one of them runs it through a software program that reads the book and changes any word or any structure or any paragraph structure down to a sixth grade reading level. Because most people couldn't comprehend. And you know why that is? Is because we stopped testing for comprehension in the ninth grade. And people then never improve the skill. We get so good at one thing and then we never develop it. Here's a fair question. How good are you? Like, how good really are you? And then I would ask you this. If you score yourself high, I would ask you this. Compared to what? See, I thought I was good. I thought I was good at sales. And then I started to hang around really high performers, peak performers. And I realized they could mop the floor with me, no pun intended. I had, maybe commanded the basics, but I didn't really understand. I didn't understand value proposition. I didn't understand commitment objective. I didn't understand the psychology of selling. I didn't understand how to sell to different personalities. I didn't understand how to identify the words that somebody uses that would then tell me what words I needed to use to drive their motivation. I didn't know how to uncover somebody's real pain, what their real desire was, what their true goals were. I thought I did, and at some level I did, but not at a deep level. And it's no wonder I was getting average results. I was average. Now, my problem was I was a solopreneur, so I couldn't compare my results to anybody else but my results yesterday. And for most people, you're part of a sales team. And you may be number one on that team and feeling really good about yourself. But I would ask you, have you compared yourself to the number ones on some other teams? We see this all the time when kids who are, growing up in a small city or a small rural area and they go to a small high school and they're the valedictorian. They're the number one in the class. And then they go off to college and they realize there's a bunch of other smart kids out there. And they realize they never developed the study habits. They never developed the skill of transferring knowledge. And then they struggle. We wonder why. Why do so many top high school students fail out and struggle in their first year of school? It's because they never really had any competition. They were comparing themselves to those around them. They were comparing themselves to the statistic, putting themselves in a group and not looking at their individual performance. And if you didn't score yourself really high, if I were to ask you, how good are you? And you said you were really good, and I asked you compared to what? Or if you said you weren't that great, and on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 5, a 6, or 7, maybe you're up near 8, I would ask, why? Why so low? What are you doing to get better? What are you doing to get from a 7 to a 9? What are you doing to go from 8 to a 10? See, the biggest room in my life is the room for improvement, and it probably is in your life too. What are you doing to improve? What are you doing to grow yourself? Not just to stay sharp, to really get better, to increase your value to the marketplace. See, the law of compensation is very clear. The amount of money you make is always in direct proportion for the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. And for most people, they don't have to do anything for the need for what they do. You don't have to go out and make a need for whatever it is that you do. I don't have to go out and create the need for sales training or wealth creation or mentoring. That need naturally exists. And chances are whatever you sell, there's already a market for it. You don't have to do anything for that market. So the need for what you do is taken care of. The next is, how good are you? Most people are average. But when you can go from average to peak performer, that's when the third rule of compensation, that you become very difficult to replace because there's very few pros. The National Speakers Association has something about, I think it's 5,000 paid members. Very few of those people make more than $5,000 a year as professional speakers. Why? They all speak. They all have something to say. But they haven't gone beyond average, so therefore they lack the self-confidence. So when the opportunity comes for them to extend their value into the marketplace, to sell themselves, they sabotage. They fail. And yet, they never get better. It never occurs to them to invest in a class, to practice. I spent a couple of years with the great Les Brown, probably the number one speaker in the world. He and I were on a speaking tour for Subway Corporation. Subway was doing the Subway Challenge, the weight loss challenge. And Les Brown and I were going from city to city to city. In between those, about day 5, after 5 cities in a row, we had a day off. I was in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. So was he. We were on our down day. And I was upstairs just kind of watching YouTube videos, doing email. And around lunchtime, I went downstairs to the lobby to go to the restaurant. And as I was walking through the lobby, in came Les Brown, the number one highest paid speaker in the world at the time. And he was wearing what I called the uniform, his shirt and tie, suit jacket. He had obviously been out speaking. And I asked him, like, what do you do? Like, you're dressed, it's the day off. You know what he said to me? He said, speakers speak. He said, I had some new content I've been wanting to try. And he had volunteered at a homeless shelter and went down and gave a motivational speech for 2 hours. Here's a guy making $75,000 an hour when he's on stage. And he's out speaking for free at a homeless shelter just to get better, just to test new content. Think about that. He says here in the book, he says, there is a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, or belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and poverty. It doesn't take you any more energy. It doesn't take you any more effort to grow than it does to sit and not grow. Sitting and not growing, you have to put effort into not growing. It takes effort to stay in the status quo. Either way, you're expending time. The question is are you investing that time in things that are going to help you grow or not? See, if you don't believe in yourself, if you lack the self-belief, then of course you will never have the desire. Of course you will stay stuck wanting, hoping, and wishing. What's necessary to go from hope, want, and wish into desire, into burning desire, into all-consuming obsession is this idea that you can actually do it. This belief that I can do it. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, I'm going to have to do things I've never done before. Yes, I'm going to fail, but the price is worth it. I want it so badly. I'm willing to submit myself to a process. I'm willing to be open-minded to a new idea. Do you realize that 99.7% of the people who started watching this video are now watching some stupid cat video? They've stopped watching it. Closed-minded. This is just another motivational speak. I wonder what he's selling. Who cares what I'm selling? If you don't have what you want, if you're not at the top performance, who cares what somebody's selling? I'd pay anything. I'd go anywhere if I could just lock onto one idea that would help me improve, that would help me get better. I'm willing to pay the price. I'm willing to put in the short-term sacrifice for the permanent reward. I rented the Sistine Chapel. Think about that. My wife and I got married in the Sistine Chapel in Rome. I rented the Colosseum, the Roman Colosseum at night, just private. Myself, my wife, my client and her husband, an art docent I hired to take us through, and I flew my friend who's a photographer from California out there so he could take pictures of it. Do you know what it costs to rent the Sistine Chapel? Do you know what it costs to rent the Colosseum? Where it's just you? During the day, just so you know, the Sistine Chapel will get 55,000 visitors. 75,000 visitors go to the Colosseum every day. We had it private. That's a permanent reward. You know what? I forgot all about the struggle. I don't remember all those hard times. I've forgotten them. They were big and monumental, front of my mind, man, when I was struggling, when I was cleaning toilets, when I was failing, when I had employees quit, when I had clients not pay, when I would go and cold call in the rain, when I would drop off submittal after submittal. Some people, I'm still waiting for them to get back to me. I forgot all about that hard work, because I'm living the permanent reward. He says, through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, which she has never divulged, nature wraps up in the impulse of a strong desire that something which recognizes no such word as impossible and accepts no such reality of failure. What's he saying here? He's saying that in nature, the way that you were designed, there are laws of creation. 7 laws that govern the way that you think, behave, and create. Everything in the universe operates by law. You know this. You know this. You just don't know the power of knowing this, but you know the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. That never changes. You know that you could Google right now, when will the sunrise be on December 27th, 2038? And within a second, Google will tell you, and you know the reason why they can tell you is because it's governed by law. That's the law of rhythm. Today, every single GPS, every navigational system is still set to the North Star. Why? Because the laws of the universe are so precise that we can send a rocket to Mars and we can land within a precision of a fraction of a second, within the precision of inches of where we know it's going to be, because we understand the law of creation. There are 7 laws that govern the way that you think and behave. And he says, through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, nature wraps up the impulse of strong desire. There's a law, it's called the law of vibration, that tells you that when your desire goes from a want and a wish and increases in its amplitude of vibration, it becomes such a strong vibrational force in the universe that you attract to you the people, the conditions, and the circumstances that are in harmony with what you want. The problem is that most of us have never magnetized what we really want. So we attract small, insignificant wins in our life, and we settle for that. This is as good as it's going to get. What do you expect in this market? I'm talking about something completely different here. I'm talking about you really understanding this principle on desire. Now, if you want, in the description below, There's a link. My team has put it there. And if you click on that link, I'm going to send you the 6 steps that he has in this book for developing your desire. It is the necessary ingredient of success and achievement. What did he say here? He says, no one ever reaches the level of true achievement, never transfers their idea into real success, into serious quantities of money, unless and until they go from wanting and wishing to an all-consuming desire, to an obsession. And if you don't know how to do that, and if you've never done that process, click on the link below, give me your email address. My team will send you a copy of it. And then I want you to watch the next video. Just stay tuned. Give yourself 90 days of just listening to this channel. Just this channel. Give yourself 15 minutes a day of really good content in. And I guarantee you, your results will begin to change. I'll see you in the next video. Be well.